Okay, good morning. Today's daf is Nedarim daf Ayin Tet. We're going to begin at the bottom of Ayin Chet. I'm going to share my screen and let's note exactly where we're up to. We have yesterday, we noted several different intentions that a husband could have when he is silent after hearing about his wife's neder. The problem, I should really combine number 1 and 2. In fact, God willing, after this, I will re-edit it to combine the first 2 of these options. But so option 1 and 2 are, he's silent because he really wants to confirm his vow immediately. Or he could be silent because he wants to confirm the vow at the end of the day, when that's the deadline for being silent. That if you are silent until the end of the day, well, then the vow has been confirmed. Or his silence could be an effort to annoy his wife, and really he plans to annul the vow, but he's a little bit annoyed about the fact that she made the vow in the first place and is putting him out in order to make sure to annul it, to revoke it, excuse me, please. And so as a result, to be made for it. So as a result, he says, I'm going to be silent now, but I'm going to revoke it. And then finally, he could be silent because he doesn't know what he's going to do yet. He's just unsure. He doesn't have any specific intentions about what's going on. And Rabbi Hanina said, talking about the third of those categories, the annoy one's wife category, not that he was advocating for it, but nonetheless, he said about it the following. He said that if one is silent in order to annoy one's wife, and the Ron explained, and the person intends to annul the vow at some point, well, then he does not have to actually annul the vow that day. He even can annul the vow 10 days later. So meaning that the deadline doesn't apply, right? The deadline of the end of the day doesn't apply. And one can understand why, because we have said that in certain circumstances, Beit Hillel would agree, and even Beit Shammai agrees on Shabbos, that you don't actually need anything affirmative to come out of your mouth. You need to do an action to indicate that you have no intention. But now what this is saying is that even maybe if you don't have any action, even if you just think to yourself, I want to be Mayfair, or I want to be Mayfair in the future, that is going to be sufficient to cause the hafara, cause the revocation. And as a result, you don't have to finish that process immediately. You can finish that process even 10 days later. So that was what Rabbi Hanina said. And we challenged him once yesterday, and that challenge failed. We're now going to challenge him 4 more times. And 3 of those challenges will be successful, and we will. And the bottom line is that Rabbi Hanina's statement cannot stand. And in fact, if one were to have in mind to annoy one's wife and not revoke the vow through the first full day of having first day of having heard about it, well, then the vow will have been considered confirmed. And let's take a look as we see. Now, the first of the 4 challenges will not be successful, but we have to get through it in order to get to the 3 successful challenges. And with that, we will finish the 10th perek of Nedarim, and we will then begin the 11th perek, the 11th and final chapter of Nedarim. So let's jump right into it. Maybe that's not really jumping right into it, but in any event, because we've done a 5-minute introduction, but in any event, let's get to it. So now we are on the second to last line of Ayin Chet Amabet. Second word on the line, Masiv Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda challenged with the following. He cites the following brisa. The brisa says, Chomer b'hakem that you can actually have a hakama is more strict. There is an aspect of confirming a vow that's more limited than revoking a vow. And there is a way in which revoking is more strict, is more narrow. You have more requirements associated with it. So Chomer Bahakim, that confirming is more strict because Shahashtika Mekayemet, that because even quiet can be. Now, I guess in this instance, the Chomer is not on the performance of the confirmation, but on the result, meaning that it is easier to be strict in the result of having a neder be confirmed, because even silence is sufficient for confirmation. But shtika does not have the ability to annul, to eliminate the vow, i.e., through revocation. And similarly, Kiyam belibo kayam, if you confirm in your heart without saying anything, that's confirmation. Hafer belibo eino mufar, but revocation in your heart won't do anything. Kiyam, and all right, now let's take a look at the Ran here. Well, you know what? Let's do the finish the brisa and explain the question, explain how this is a challenge, and then we can look at the Ran. So Kiyam ein yachol lahafer. If you once you have done confirmation, so then you cannot do hafara. Meaning, if you have confirmed your wife's vow, too late. There's nothing you can do. You can't undo it. You can't now do hafara. Now, the interesting question is, well, what if you do hatara on your confirmation? That might be possible, that you can do hatara on your confirmation, and then you can once again do hafara. Obviously, or potentially, you would have to do it on that same day. But okay, so in any event, and haver ein yachol l'kayim. On the other hand, when it comes to revocation, once you revoke the vow, there's no confirmation of the vow. You can't confirm the vow because it no longer exists, essentially. Now, what's the proof? We learned that shtika is considered confirmation. So my la b'shosek al manas l'meika. So wouldn't this kind of confirmation, meaning what's the big deal if your intention is to confirm? Well, then why, what do you need to tell us? So it must be that the silence that we're talking about is a silence of annoyance, meaning I do plan to revoke the vow, but I didn't get to it today, and I did, and since I was silent, even though I really was just silent in order to annoy her, maybe that's what we're talking about. And what this Bryce is telling us is that you cannot revoke later, which would completely contradict Rabbi Chanina's statement, because Rabbi Chanina says that if you are silent to annoy, well, then you can revoke a few days later. No, so Gemara says, no, that's not the issue. V'shosek al manas l'kayim. No, it must be that you're silent in order to confirm. Well, one second. If you say silence in order to confirm is what we're talking about when we talk about silence, well, hainu kiyim belebo kayam. That is exactly the situation of confirming in one's heart. Meaning, if you confirm in your heart, what are you doing? You are being silent, right? If I confirm in my heart, that's being silent. So if you're saying that the silence that is referred to in the beginning of this brisa, right? The brisa had 3 rules. The brisa's first rule was silence is confirmation. The brisa's second rule is confirmation in one's heart is confirmation. So those are 2 different rules. What's the difference? Hello, Mark. Hello, Lori. What's the difference between those 2 situations? It seems that they would be the same. If you're saying that the silence is a silence where one is thinking about confirming, well, what's the difference between that and the confirming in one's heart? Those are the same things. So Ella b'shosek stam. So we must say that the shtika that we're talking about in this brisa is a plain shtika, is the last of the categories. It's the silence with no specific intention. And so as a result, now we've defended Rabbi Chanina, because his statement is about silence to annoy. Silence to annoy. So silence to annoy, maybe Rabbi Chanina is correct. But this brisa is talking about silence with no intention and silence of confirmation. So as a result, maybe that's the story. Now, the Ran here does something very nice for us. And so we're going to take a look at the Ran. And the Ran explains, why is it that silence should be viewed differently with respect to confirmation, as opposed to silence as opposed to revocation. Meaning, why should we be more likely to treat silence as confirmation than as revocation? So let's take a look. It's the second of the lines in the Ran on Ayin Tedem and Aleph. Hafer b'libo is the beginning of it. So Hafer b'libo einu mofer ad sheyotzi b'svasav. So the Ran even adds some language that isn't quite in our Gemara. The point is that hafara, revocation in one's heart, is not good. It doesn't work until the words actually leave the person's mouth. The Nira be'enai, and he says the following: it seems to me that we are learning this principle from the silence associated with the day in which one hears about the vow. Because as a reminder, when one hears about the vow of the one's wife or daughter, you need to either revoke it that day, or if you're silent on that day, well, then it's going to be considered confirmed. Shehi mikayemet, that if you are silent on that day, that then it is considered confirmed. The time am I? What's the reason that we say that if you're silent on the day that you hear about something, it's as if you are agreeing to it and confirming it? Mishum dekevan she'avar yom shmiyah below hafer. Because you have gone through the day that you heard about the vow and you have not revoked it, Gali Adaite, he has revealed his intentions. Shehu Rotza B'Kiyum Moshel Neder. So he has shown that he wants it to be confirmed, meaning the silence over time demonstrates a desire for confirmation. So Alma, so what do we see from this? Kol Shabilibo Lekaimo Sagi. That really all you need is that intention, internal intention to be Mekayim, because that is what the silence for the day demonstrates. Ela diyahiv le'rachmana kol hahu yoma, but the Torah wanted to give us the whole day, lahafara, in order to give us time to do the hafara. Really, from a confirmation perspective, all you need is silence and intention. That's what the Ran is suggesting. Mishum da'ad da'arva, because until it gets to be night, da'arva shamsha, until the night begins to fall, until the sun sets, lo muchach midi, that you haven't proven anything. Shiyahe rotza l'kayim, that he really wants to confirm it. Dedilma basar hachi mafer lake. Because maybe he later came around and said he wanted to revoke it. Because it's his knowledge alone that is determining the factor. So umina, and from all this, what do we say? That if he wants to confirm it with his heart, if his intention, his confirmation in his heart, well, then it's confirmed immediately, because that's, especially if he then says that's what I had in intention. Because why do we wait for the entire day? Because that's how we can know, without him saying anything, what's in his heart. But if he tells us what's in his heart, well, then we know what's in his heart. Or if he tells us later, so dahabale ki'ilu avar yom shmiya, because once he has it in his heart, and we know that that's his idea, and then it's in his heart, so then it's as if the whole day has passed, because that's what we're trying to achieve by waiting the entire day, is to determine what's in his heart. All right, v'chi amrinan hacha hafar belibo ein hafar, and now, when we say in this Gemara that hafara in one's heart is not considered hafara, it is not a total statement, because dafka delo amar la tali achle. It's only if he doesn't tell her that if she made the neder that she wasn't going to eat grapes, he doesn't say, here, eat these grapes. Because if he says, here, eat these grapes, well, then we see that in fact his intention in his heart is hafara, is revoking. And so as a result of al-heka de amar lahachi, Yeah, that's what we're going to say. The fruit that they gave her that she didn't want to eat grapes. She said, "I'm not interested in eating grapes. I want to take a neder not to eat grapes." And he's like, "How could you not eat grapes? These grapes are so delicious. You should have these grapes." Maybe she wanted to eat bananas. So in any event, the point is that the husband can say, "Here are the grapes," and thereby revoke her vow, because it's clear that that's what he's trying to do. It's clear his intention. And so when his intention is clear to us, and it's not just his words, but his actions, well, then we can say, sagi, that will be sufficient. And that's what we saw before. Remember, we had the machlokas between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Beit Hillel says, not only on Shabbos do you do that. On Shabbos, we should do that because we don't want to make it too much look like a din situation of a court case situation. And so we want him to not use the language of hafara. We say, just give her the grapes and tell her eat them, and that's fine. But when it comes to the rest of the week, so then Beit Shammai said, no, you got to use your words. And Beit Hillel said, no, even not words then is also okay. But when we say not words then is also okay, we're saying it specifically in the situation where he actually does an action where he gives her the grapes. So that's the story with respect to that. Okay, so that is the that is the end of effort number 2. Effort number 2 was unsuccessful, but we're not quite done with effort number 2, because one of the things that we said at the beginning of the brisa was that there's a way in which hafara is more strict, and there's a way in which confirmation is more strict. And we told us the way that confirmation is more strict, because confirmation can even work when it comes to silence. But what was the way in which hafara is more strict? So now the Gemara asks that question. We found a method in which confirmation is more strict than revocation, but what's the situation where hafara is more strict than hakama? So I'm a Rabbi Yochanan, nish'alin al hahakim v'ein nish'alin al hahafer. That if in fact somebody does confirmation and then says, you know what, I want to revoke that confirmation, I want to annul that confirmation, he can annul that confirmation by asking a rabbi or a beit din. That the confirmation itself is like a shvuah, is like an oath, and just as a regular oath can be undone by going to a yachid mumcha or a beit din, so too this can be undone by going to a yachid mumcha or a beit din. Unlike hafara does not have that ability, and that's how hafara is more strict. It is more restrictive than hakama. Okay, so that is that. Now we have finished number 2, and now we're ready for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th efforts to challenge Rabbi Chanina. And what's the second one? This is the second one. This is the second one. Yesterday we did the first one. This is the second one, and again, it didn't work. Now we're going to have 3 challenges. All of them are going to be successful. All of them are going to show that even if you're trying to annoy your wife by being silent, that even though you are thinking in your mind, I want to revoke the vow eventually, if you don't revoke it on that day, it's not a revocation, it's a confirmation. So Masav Rav Kahana asked the following challenges from the following. So again, we have another brisa. Im hacharesh yacharish la isha. If the so that we're going to cite the pasuk. The pasuk in its complete form says the following: Im hacharesh yacharish la isha. Right? If the husband is silent, miyom el yom, from one day to the next, vehekim es nidareha, and he is thereby confirmed her vow, or one can understand it as, or he has confirmed her vow. Oh, as kola sareha, or any other kind of prohibition of her on herself, her neder, or any kind of other prohibition. Asher aleha, that's on her. Hekim osam, then it is they are confirmed. Ki hacharesh la biyom shamo. Because he was quiet on the day in which he heard about it. So what does it tell us by the repetition of hacharesh yacharish la isha b'shosek almanas lemeked hakasam medaber? So the Torah must be talking in this situation about silence in order to annoy one's wife. Ata Omer b'shosek almanas lemeked. Well, in second, you think it's going to be a silence to annoy. Well, eno ela b'shosek almanas l'kayim. Maybe it's only silence to confirm. So, well, no, it can't be silence to confirm. The Brisa concludes because kishahu Omer ki hecharish la. Because at the end of the pasuk it says ki hecharish la. So we have a silence with respect to that. So harei b'shosek almanas l'kayim hakasam medaber. Well, that's talking about being quiet in order to confirm. Well, hama ani mekayim here. So how do I have a different case of im hacharesh yacharish la isha? What's the silence involved in that situation? Must be b'shosek almanas l'meked hakasam medaber. Must be that the pasuk is talking about silence to annoy. So to Yofta, we've disproved it. Well, in second, the Gemara says that is not really a good disproof because velokim habeshosik almanas l'kayim habeshosik stam. All right, you've eliminated the possibility of silence in order to confirm, but you haven't even dealt with the silence for silence sake, meaning you silence that you don't know what you're going to do. So the Gemara explains, there's actually an extra verse here. Now, what does that mean? There's not really an extra verse, but rather take a look in the Ran, third to last of the narrow lines in the Ran. The Ran explains, we have three verses, three words that are really going to do it for us. We have hacharesh yacharish, trey, that's two words, and ki hacharish la hatlasa. So we have three references in this one verse to cherish, to silence. So the point is that if you have three references and you only needed one, so then the two additional references teach us something extra. The first one teaches us that if you were silenced with an intention to confirm, well, then that's considered confirmation. The second one tells us that if you were silenced with no special intention, you are intending to confirm. And the third one tells us that even if you were silenced to annoy and you wanted to revoke, if you were silent, and you were silent all day, tough luck, you have actually confirmed the vow. Okay, so that is disproof number one, but that's not, the Gemara is not satisfied, and two other Amoraim now bring their own challenges that will also be successful. So
Rabbi, that refutation sounds pretty strong. It's like you don't need anything else.
So you're absolutely right. And indeed, actually, we can take a look of, hold on. Okay, so you're totally right. The Ran addresses that in the top of the widest lines. So Masiv Rava Nadra im Chashecha. So Rava is now going to challenge his own challenge. So Afal Gabda Tosav Chad Zimna, that even though we've got one disproved, so most Vinan Aleha too. We've got one challenge. We're going to challenge additionally. The nafkamina and the reason that we've got it, what the difference that it will make is the imish gachinan piruka behahi delael akasi havya haktayota. So we'll have another tiyufta. So yes, it sounds like a good proof, but maybe we'll find another need for one of those words, hacharish yacharish, or ki hacharesh law. So one of those words will have another need for it, and in which case that would undermine the disproof. So we're going to bring other challenges that we'll have, in case the first one falls away. So not a perfect answer, but that's the answer that the Ran offers to your excellent question. So Masiv Rava. So Rava now challenges. So Nadra im chashecha. So from our on some level, one can also understand this as different elements or different conversations that have now been gathered together. And of course, this challenge, it may help us explain why this entire discussion is specifically here, because Rava is going to use our Mishnah as the basis for his challenge. So let's take a look and see how he does. So Nadra im chashech, we said that if the woman makes a neder immediately with the beginning of Shabbos, so Meifir law ad shelo chashka, or immediately before Shabbos, or immediately or on Shabbos immediately before the end, well, then he has the ability to revoke it as long as it is not yet dark. Because if in fact he did not do hafara before it got dark on Shabbos, einu yachol lahafer, he will not be able to revoke it after Shabbos. So the point is the following. Remember that the discussion that we had this question about, and we cited this Gemara earlier, that when it comes to revocation, the husband can revoke any vow on Shabbos. But when it came to annulment, you can't annul any vow, because you can't annul a vow that's not necessary to be annulled on Shabbos. And we explained that one of the reason that we can revoke any vow on Shabbos, that the husband can revoke any vow on Shabbos, is because once Shabbos ends, it's too late. There's nothing more that he can do about it. And so as a result, if in fact Rabbi Chanina is right, and there is a method of delaying revocation until after Shabbos, why not say the following? Amai, why limit, why allow revocation in all situations? Why not leheve kishosek almanas lemekit? Why not treat some situations like a situation in which the husband is trying to annoy? Meaning, and the Ran goes through this. So let's take a look at the Ran, end of the second to last second wide line in the Ran. V'amai lahavi kashosek almanas lemekit di'i amar. Because if you're going to say b'shosek almanas lemekit matzi mefer, that if you are silent in order to annoy, you'll be able to revoke the vow even several days later. Lefisha osa hakama, because of that method of confirmation. Lo haisa al das sheyiskayim haneder, and we don't say that in that situation that's a fulfillment of the neder, that in fact that's establishing the neder, that's confirming the neder. Well, then kol shekain, certainly de'ihavu amri rabbanan de'enu mafir nedarim she'ena litzora, that if the rabbis had said, if the rabbis had said that we should be able to revoke vows, that we should not revoke vows that aren't necessary for Shabbos, well, dehavim matzah hafar, then he should be able to do hafara later. So mishecha shecha, after it gets dark, dehamai deshasik b'Shabbos, because the fact that he was silent on Shabbos, lav mishum kiyum, it's not because he was trying to confirm the vow. It's because the rabbis told him not to do hafara for that vow. So elavadai mashma de kol shtika mikayem. So it must be that every kind of shtika, even a shtika that is required by the rabbis, or even a shtika where you're trying to annoy your wife but you really want to revoke the vow, every shtika is like a confirmation, and so tiyufta. So the Gemara says, yes, that is actually another refutation of Rabbi Chanina's statement. And now we get to the fifth and final one, and with that we'll finish the paragraph. Okay, so what's the final one? So Masav Rav Ashi, no problem. Rav Ashi says and challenges Rabbi Chanina from the following. We have a Mishnah that we will learn in about a little over a week. Yodea ani sheyesh nedarim aval eini yodea sheyesh mefirin. If a husband says, you know what, I didn't know that I had the ability to revoke the vow of my wife. I didn't know about this law at all. Well, you know what? On that day, he can revoke. Then what does he say? Yafer. He can revoke at that moment. Now he has the ability because now he's learned the law. But Yodea Anisha Yesh Mefirin, I knew that there was a theoretical possibility about my revoking. About Yodea Shazen Neder, but I didn't realize that the words that came out of her mouth were considered a neder. Well, Rabbi Meir Omer Lo Yafer. Well, Rabbi Meir says, no, too late. You were silent on that day, so you didn't know. Yes, you didn't know that the neder was a neder, but it's too late. But the Chachamim say you can be yafer. Well, 1 second. How could Rabbi Meir say in this situation lo yafer? If in fact Rabbi Chanina is correct, then Rabbi Meir should be able to say, "Amai lahavi kashosik al manas l'meikat." The man doesn't have intention to confirm. The man, indeed, if he had known about the vow, that it was a vow that he could do hafara, he would have wanted to intended to annul it. That shouldn't be any worse than a man who's trying to annoy his wife. That should be easier. So again, we say that is a refutation. And so bottom line is all silence. If you are silent for the day, that is going to be a confirmation. Okay, and now Hadron Allah Nara Hamorasa, Hadron Allah Nara Hamorasa, Hadron Allah Nara Hamorasa, and now we begin the final chapter of Masechet Nedarim. I'm a little sad because this has been such an enjoyable, for me at least, enjoyable Masechet that the Ran has really so provided us with such beautiful guidance through it all. And okay, so we're now on the last chapter. All right, so the last chapter, yes, question.
The Ran's commentary is usually in the back of traditional Gemaras rather than on the page. But we don't usually, well, maybe it's done in rabbinical school.
It's not, not only is it not, I don't think the Ran in other Masechtot does what the Ran does here. This is really a commentary on the Gemara.
That's my question.
That's unique. The Ran in other Masechtot is not on the Gemara itself, and it has on some level a different purpose. And so as a result, it's really here where there is no, where although it's labeled Rashi at the top, it's understood to not be Rashi. And so the Ran, I don't know whether he had that in mind, but the idea being that, it was a Masechet that needed a commentary, and he offered a commentary that does a beautiful job of serving both as Rashi and as Tosfos. And so, like I said, I've really enjoyed it. So, okay, well, we now jump into the last of the Parakim, and we say that we're dealing still with revocation and annulment, but especially revocation, and in particular revocation by a husband. And although some say that a father can revoke all vows, when it comes to a husband, everybody agrees that there's not a blanket ability for a husband to revoke all vows of his wife. Rather, there are two categories of vows that can be revoked. There are the categories are, as on the screen, Nedarim that involve the couple's relationship, so that makes a lot of sense, and Nedarim that involve the wife's self-affliction. So the Gemara is going to now begin with the wife's self-affliction, and then we will pick up and ask, well, why didn't the Mishnah mention the case of the relationship? So, but let's dive in now, and we're going to deal with the Nedarim of affliction. So ve'elu nedarim shehu mefer dvarim sheyesh behen inui nefesh. These are the things that he can revoke, things that involve self-affliction. So note that he didn't mention, the Mishnah, the author of this Mishnah did not mention the possibility of revoking relationship items. So if she says im erchatz, if I bathe, the im lo archatz, or if I don't bathe. Now, what in the world that means, we're going to see that in the Gemara. And indeed, that's going to be the cliffhanger for tomorrow. Im et kashet, if I put on some makeup, the im lo et kashet, or if I don't put on some makeup or jewelry, the word can be used in both contexts. Amar Rebbe Yossi, ein elo nidre inui nefesh. That's not a self-affliction. Failing to bathe and failing to wear jewelry or makeup is not the kind of self-affliction that the husband has the right to revoke. Rather, the elu hein nidre inui nefesh. These are the things that are constitute self-affliction. Amra konam peros ha'olam alai. No fruit in the world am I going to be able to eat. That's what the husband has the ability to revoke. Peros medina zoalai. If I say I'm not going to eat fruit from Spain, well then yavi lama medina acheres. He can bring the husband can bring the wife fruit from another place. So and peros here doesn't necessarily mean only fruit. It could mean any kind of produce. Okay, peros chenveni azalai. The produce of this particular storekeeper I'm not going to have. Well, Eina Yachol Lahaver, the husband can't revoke that one either, because Elami Menu, because it's only from, he can't revoke that one because that's the only one, there are other storekeepers around. But in Lohaisa Parnasa, so Elami Menu. However, if he only really gets, he only gets a good deal, it's Parnasa To, if he only gets his provisions, meaning if this is the main supplier, and the question is why is he the main supplier? But maybe he's the only one who extends credit or something like that. Well, then hareze yafer, then he can revoke it, because divrei Rebbe Yossi, that's what Rebbe Yossi says. So basically, the difference is it self-annoying, meaning that is it a simple level of self-affliction, or do you basically have to be so afflicted that there's no way out? So for your self-preservation, exactly. So Rabbi Yossi says no, it's got to be the higher threshold, and the Tanna Kama says no, it could be the lower threshold. But now we get to the Gemara's question. Well, why didn't we say anything about the other category of Nedarim, namely the relationship category? So Nidre Inoi Nefesh Hu Demefer, She'ein Behen Inoi Nefesh Einu Mefer. Does that imply that anything that does not involve affliction, he will not be able to revoke? V'hatanya, we have a brisa. Ben Ishla Ishto, Ben Av Levito. The things that relate to the connection between the husband and the wife and the father and the daughter. That's that milamed shabal mefer nedarim shebeino leveina, that the husband has the ability to revoke nedarim that involve the relationship between them. That's what the brisa says. So certainly our Mishnah would be consistent with that. So Amrei, so they explained no. So we're going to give two answers. The first answer is going to end up being rejected as to what's the difference between nedarim of self-affliction and nedarim regarding their relationship. So Halain v'halain Mayfair. Really, everybody agrees that he can revoke both, right? Because that's what we say in our Mishnah, and that's what we say in this brisa. But mihu inui nefesh Mayfair la'olam. However, when it comes to something that she's afflicting herself, well, then once he revokes it, it's revoked forever. Aval ein behen inui nefesh. However, if it's not about her self-affliction, but rather about their relationship, k'de'isa t'chosei havya hafara. Only when they're married, when she is under his supervision, that is when the revocation will be effective. But if he were to divorce her, then the neder will come back. Now, and indeed, the Gemara is going to confirm exactly what we just said, so that there's no question. So bidvarim shebeino leveina she'ein behen inui nefesh. So things that were between the husband and the wife, where there's no inui nefesh involved, that is where he is. Those will come back if they get divorced. Aval yesh behen inui nefesh lo chayel aleha nidra. But if there's any inui nefesh involved, well then, even after divorce, they will not come back. So now the Gemara questions that, because udvarim she'ein behen inui nefesh ki megarish lachayla Allah, could it possibly be that when you divorce your wife and you've annulled a vow of the relationship between you and her, that neder takes effect again? V'hatnan, we have a Mishnah that suggests that that's not the case, because Rabbi Yochanan and this Mishnah, which is discussing a neder in which the woman prohibits the work of her produce from her husband benefiting from it. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer Yafer. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says the husband should revoke such a vow. Why? Because Shema Yigarshena Usehei Asuralo. Because maybe he will divorce her, and if he divorces her, she's going to be forbidden to come back to him, because as a result, she won't be able to. Because again, once the neder it becomes effective, so if he's not going to be able to remarry her, because maybe he's going to end up benefiting from her handiwork, from her produce. And so as a result, that's why we have to, he needs to revoke the vow now. Well, 1 second. If in fact we said Alma ki megaresh Allah umefer la mikara havya hafara, but that shows that here this is a relationship neder. This is not an inui nefesh neder, and yet the implication of this Mishnah and the implication of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is that once it's revoked forever, even when it comes to dvarim shebeino leveina. So therefore, we now are going to give a different answer. Answer number 2. So Amrei halein v'halein havya hafara. Again, we say doesn't make a difference whether it's a neder about inui nefesh or the relationship. It's going to be able to be revoked, and its revocation is going to be permanent. Ela nidroi inui nefesh mefer ben atzmo uvein la'acherim. But when it comes to her, when she's trying to self-afflict, and we say that the neder is revoked, well, then it's revoked for everyone. It's not just revoked for him. Ein behen inui nefesh. But when the neder is not just about self-affliction, but is related to the matters between the two of them, well, then la'atzmo mefer, for his benefit, it is revoked. La'acherim eino mefer. But for the benefit of others, then it won't be revoked. And in fact, we can understand our Mishnah in teaching this, that when our Mishnah says, at the beginning of our Mishnah, it said, Elu Nedarim shehu mefer. What it means is Elu Nedarim shehu mefer bein atzmo levein la'acherim. That these are the things that when he revokes, he's revoking whether it's for himself or for others. Nedarim sheyesh behen inui nefesh. So things that involve inui nefesh, then the revocation is for everyone. And so if you don't have that, well then, but if you don't have that, well then the revocation is only in connection with the husband. And it makes sense, because the whole point of the relationship is the relationship with the husband. So the husband can be can revoke the relation, the aspect of the vow that connects to him. So 1 second. So now I'm going to set up the cliffhanger for tomorrow, God willing. So what about the language, that cryptic language of if I bathe, if I don't bathe, if I put on makeup, if I don't put on makeup? What in the world does that mean? Well, for the answer to that, stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. So I look forward to seeing you, God willing, tomorrow. And terrific, Mark. Wonderful. All right. So I'm going to turn off this. Hold on. Ruktiya, thank you.